Bienvenidas y bienvenidos al último encuentro online desde el Festival Ídem que celebra cada año la Casa Encendida. Este encuentro desde la plataforma de la Casa y también de forma presencial en el patio de la Casa Encendida. Hoy tenemos a Milo Rau y a Nora Chipaumire, dos agitadores de la escena contemporánea europea que compartirán sus experiencias sobre el confinamiento. Hablarán sobre África, manifiestos, autores clásicos y sus reinterpretaciones, sobre lugares peligrosos, Mosul, Afganistán, Brasil y Congo oriental. Ambos comparten el riesgo en la forma en que abordan sus trabajos escénicos. Milo visita lugares de extrema acción bélica tanto en la investigación como en la creación de su teatro documental. Y Nora, como artista y performer, lo hace desde la innovación de sus propuestas, donde interpela de forma directa al público. Ambos invitados, en pasadas ediciones, serán los encargados de cerrar esta serie de encuentros entre los artistas del pasado, presente y futuro del festival. Al acabar podremos ver el documental Hate Radio, la radio de las 1000 colinas y el genocidio de Ruanda, dirigido y producido por Milo Rau y su colectivo The International Institute of Political Murder. Nora Chipaumire nació en 1965 en lo que entonces se conocía como Umtali, Rhodesia, actualmente Mutare, Zimbabue. Ella es un producto de la educación colonial para africanos solamente, escolarización del grupo B. Nora ha realizado otros estudios en la Universidad de Zimbabue, Derecho, y Mills College, Danza, en Oakland, California. Milo Rau es dramaturgo, director y cineasta. Es uno de los directores más aclamados y controvertidos en la actualidad, con un teatro documental firmemente político y que también cuestiona las estructuras sobre las que se sostiene el teatro y el arte contemporáneo. En 2007 fundó la compañía teatral y productora cinematográfica International Institute of Political Murder y desde entonces sus obras han llegado a los principales escenarios internacionales, conquistando festivales como el Festival de Aviñón o el Berliner Theatertreffen. Su último proyecto, Antígona en Amazonas, interrumpido por la COVID-19, ha sido llevado a cabo junto a pueblos indígenas, activistas y actores de Brasil y Europa. Hace pocos días se estrenó en el Festival de Venecia su película The New Gospel. Hola.
So we will talk for as long as necessary. Maybe it's a good half an hour, maybe it's an hour. I don't know, Milo, but I have tried to follow some of the things that you've been doing via Zoom in lockdown, and enjoy this conversations with Sreja, conversations with the fantastic lady in Cuba. Have read
Tanya. In the same format like you, huh?
Exactly. You know, absolutely enjoyable. So I thank you for this presence in this digital space that continues to be rigorous and asks us, you know, what is the future now? What are we doing now? And also for the Black Jesus, who I've been excited about for months. This work around the Black Jesus.
He's here. Huh?
I know. I see. That's why I mentioned it. I say.
I put it.
Thank you for everything you do. So, but you know, I was both nervous and excited to be, speaking with you. We have had a dialogue before in Ghent, and we came to visit your space of work, your rehearsal space, and you were extremely generous with both your intelligence and just access to space. And this is kind of part of the manifesto. So I'm curious about the manifestos, the writing of manifestos, and the actual implementations of manifestos. How did you arrive at that radical, fantastic manifesto that is the NT-Ghent manifesto? Did you write it alone, or did you write it collectively?
I wrote it collectively.
Mm-hmm.
When I was appointed as director from the artistic director from the NT-Ghent, I decided that I didn't want to escape to my duties as a modern director. And the problem is that the duties are always implicit. So since 25 years, we are talking about, for example, that people has access to the rehearsals,
yes.
that the production process becomes open to everybody, that all the people can reach the stage, and so on. And so all this inclusiveness, blah, 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 was never translated in an institutional technical manifesto. And I said it's more simple for all of us. So we are around 100 people working here. If we sit together and before we start working, we write down the rules, and following these rules, I mean, we start with something. We don't talk about sustainability. We don't talk about quotas. We don't a bit. So I said, okay, this time we focus on the production side. So how will we produce? Huh? So that's the question. It's not how we will communicate, how will our building look like, how we will be ecological. It's not in. So these are other manifestos to be written. And I wanted to write down that it is very simple. You follow the rules, and then you are, if you want or not, inclusive. So because I'm a bit bored by this, you know me, Nora, I'm a bit kind of rigid. In the end of the day, I look simpatico, but I'm a Stalinist. And and I wanted that ideology, and really what is happening is not separated anymore, that you don't have like this conservative behavior, and on the other side you write beautiful texts about inclusivity, and you have always a black waiter that is creating whatever, etc., etc. So this way how it is done, and I said, okay, then let's do it like this. And then we sat together with all departments. At the very time I was producing La Reprise, so I also included a lot of these actors that were accidentally there. Yes. And of course, I also included people that was not from the Entegent. So I had all people from outside.
It's such a fantastic manifesto, and I think many institutions now, especially in the US, I would say, or let's say in everywhere in the world, who are being confronted by angry young artists. To change, to change, and they are being really forced. They're being outed, like, tell us exactly what you have done, and people are discovering that in the past 20 years maybe they've produced only one production that was so-called diverse. that had any kind of relevance at all. That I love when you say this karaoke, because it's so apt.
It's karaoke. Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever write the manifesto, Nora?
I am obsessed with manifesto writings. I think this is my favorite type of writing. Of all time. When I was studying, the only class I did well at, or the only project that I did well at, was to produce a manifesto.
Great. I did once a seminary with students, and they said, what it is about? I said, the seminary is called the Manifesto Massacre, and everybody has to write a manifesto.
I really believe in this, and I try to, whenever I'm working with also other people, to insist that they write a manifesto. That's always the starting point, and I think to insist on this makes everybody nervous. It feels extremely old-fashioned. It also feels extremely political, and people don't want to be political. I don't know why. It's like, state your agenda, make it public. This makes you accountable.
Yeah, it makes you accountable, and explicitity, if the word exists in English, is for me political, because I mean, apolitical is to know what you should do, and to do it's different, and having rules is just connecting both of them and being accountable, because people can come to me and say, but Milo, you wrote in your manifesto that I can't be in your rehearsals. So even if you hate me, I can be there. And I say, yeah, that's true. And then sometimes people or journalists are asking me, can I come to the rehearsal? Because of course you are very sensitive, Milo. And I said, but you have the right. You don't have to ask me.
Exactly. So no, I do write manifestos as a habit, and I think I also look at the text of any work I do as a sort of manifesto anyway. So there are manifestos that I write just as I've been writing quite a few for especially during this COVID, and then the Black Springs, the Red Summer. And they all seem to be kind of asking myself, like, what can I do? So like the most current one starts with think. Damn it. It's I think there's just a lack of thinking, come on, if we all thought a lot of the issues that confront us right now, the inequities, kind of just the redundancies, they wouldn't quite exist. They wouldn't quite exist if we just thought, and then I say, read, just fucking read, educate yourself. You educate yourself. It's just this don't over rely on social media to tell you what to do. Just start reading. There is so much misinformation, but read, kind of get information for yourself, and to recognize that we do have the power to kind of agitate in our little milieus.
Nora, one question. I for me, taking over an institution like this Flemish City Theatre was a quite interesting move to do, because then you have possibilities, and for example, you understand how weak after 50 years of I was saying after 50 years of neoliberalism, the institutions of the first world, especially in Belgium, are very weak. They are extremely weak. So taking them over is very, very simple. We had, for example, no, they are weak. They are sick. They are really sick. You push them and they fall. And that I was excited. I thought it's a long fight to make this thing, the construction of the National Theatre here, and it will take me like a lifetime, and I will be destroyed, and scandals, but nothing. Everybody just said, wow, okay, we take it. Okay, can we be part of it? So I mean, I'm now a bit, irony. I had some little fights, but it was not what I expected. And my question is, Nora, as you are so sharp and so strong and so well known from everybody, why don't you take over a big institution, and change it at all?
I really, that's a provocation that I hope in the next 5 years I'll be able to say I did it, because I think it's crucial for working artists to be able to take over institutions and reposition them. I have been busy being an independent artist, and to be honest with you, I am sick and tired of the struggles of being an independent artist. 60% of the work is survival, and then 40% of the work is actually doing the work that you do. So I think this equation needs to be changed. I would love. I'm going to start looking for a weak-looking institution.
But you can take over the Entegent if you want. Then I can finally go back to independency.
No, I think
we talk in private about this later.
I think my favorite institution would be the government of Zimbabwe. I think it's
okay.
Governments and their departments are running like theaters.
I was once in Switzerland because I wanted to change the laws of immigration, etc. in Switzerland. So we have 25% of the people living in 25% of the people living in Switzerland paying taxes are so-called immigrants without civil rights, without the right to vote, etc. So we created the so-called government of change, where we changed all these laws. And then in Swiss television, they were asking me, Milo, but why don't you create a party? And I said, why would I create a party? I already have a government.
Good for you. This is fantastic.
Yes, good for me.
I mean, it's it's really amazing. I mean, we laugh about it, but it's encouraging that you met, that you take over your leadership of Antigent. You're saying that it was with very little resistance and that people wanted to be involved. Perhaps this is what many of us who are protesting and taking to the streets also miss, you know, and understanding that these institutions are on their last legs, that, you know, they're dying.
But for me, very interesting, I think you shouldn't take over the government of Zimbabwe, but you should take a foreign government. That's very important. For example, Che Guevara, he took Cuba and not Argentina, where he comes from. And it's very important to, in ways, to be a bit colonialist when you take another institution. So I didn't do it in Switzerland, you know, because they know me and then they would be resistant. But when you come from the outside, they don't really know you. And
Okay.
they, you know, and then you can take them from behind.
Okay, let's talk about that, the power of the outsiderness.
Yeah.
Because that's what, you know, what is that about? Why are you allowed to implement all this radicalness, you know, outside of your home kind of boundaries?
I think every country, in my opinion, especially the smaller countries like Switzerland or like Belgium or like, I don't know, they have, I'd say, a very deep self-esteem. They always think, for example, in Switzerland, when we do a new literary show where we need an intellectual moderator, they would take a German or an American, but never a Swiss, because we think we can't do this. We need somebody from the outside to do this for us. You understand?
This is amazing. So
Yeah,
you're always a hero outside and not so much at home. That's a weird kind of thinking, that the outsider, or is it perhaps the outsider has a wider point of view?
Yeah, or I mean, another reason, in my humble opinion, is that, for example, the biggest fights I have in my homeland, which is somehow Western Europe, is with my leftist friends, because there are 500 divisions, and then when I use the words, this word or that word, they will already say, he's from this little part of our leftist camp, you know. And then I will start to have this kind of misunderstandings, and it starts to get complicated. When you come from the outside, they can't really, I mean, the people that is actually solidary with your main idea, they can't track you. They can't create, it's very difficult for them to create an enemy out of you. Or when they arrive to do it, you are already gone again. So
so this explains to me in some ways your success in places like the Eastern Congo, in Rwanda.
Yeah, that's true.
In the Amazonas.
But it's interesting, because in Switzerland it's the same. I was absent for 15 years in Switzerland. I studied sociology, and it's really interesting. I wasn't in the field, and then I came back, and then you are a stranger again. I mean, it must be the same with you when you were so long time in the national scene. Now you would come somehow back, and then everybody would say, she knows how it goes. She's quite American or whatever.
Actually, I don't know. I think I would say largely my experience at home in Zimbabwe, particular, in Southern Africa in general, is oh my goodness, she's so retro.
Oh, no.
Has she really been in America?
I am gone again.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay.
Somebody called me, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. So my experience is. I think in my part of Southern Africa, there is so much distrust of the female. Still, I mean, the patriarchy is still so much in control that there is very little, attention paid to women's work, or so much, very little space given to women's work. In my particular performance world, yes, and it's like, 0.08% of people who are working artists. Well, they are intrigued and they are curious, and we have very interesting dialogues. But in general, I find that Southern Africa for me is still very much steeped in the patriarchy, that the position of the female artist is so marginal, it's so randomly marginal, as to be ineffectual. In fact. So, and that's why, it's such a happy thing to visit Europe, to go to other places where there seems to be, an awareness that, women's work matters, as well as any other kind of gender or whatever division work. So no, Africa is weird for me. It's weird. I mean, the poverty, intellectual poverty, sometimes it's very, very upsetting, which kind of juxtaposes with kind of a potential always. There's always this potential. And so sometimes I feel like, wow, but we can do it. And look, we have nothing to lose but our poverty, in fact. we should keep going. Yeah. So I mean, I would say Radio Rwanda was my first encounter with your work, and I so appreciated. I appreciated on two fronts, or maybe more. One, the fact of radio. My first performance work was as a radio broadcaster.
Okay.
So I'm in love with radio.
Radio, mixing everything together, or you were straight?
Everything. Player, mixer, announcer. I really have a love and an endless love for radio. So it was exciting for me to see, how you took the space of a radio station and made that, the site. So just as a form, as a place to make theater, I was so excited. Many people don't get to see what it looks like inside of radio stations, because you hear.
Yeah, that's true, huh? That's true. I remember when I proposed to do it, it was very difficult to get money for hate radio, because they asked me, wow, the genocide in Rwanda, wow, super, you can have money. And then I said, yeah, but on stage you will see a radio station. People said, wow, Milo, that's cool. You make a play about the genocide in Rwanda, and Switzerland was connected to this somehow. And they were interested to fund it. But then I said, listen, we will put on stage a radio station. And then these people, and they were all working in radio, but Swiss radio and Belgian radio is very boring. So they said, no, this is the most boring place in the world, so we don't give you money. And then I said, but then I said, listen, the interesting thing is, from the genocide in Rwanda, like from the genocide against the Jews in Europe, etc., we have so many images, but this is the only place that was never photographed. So we have no idea. We hear the sounds. Hate radio is Radio Television de Micolin is a very known radio, but there is no photos. It's not these skulls. It's not this kind of imagery you would know.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's fantastic. I loved it. Of course, I mean there was quite a rush to do work around this genocide by different people.
Absolutely,
but I thought really what was most affecting for me was this use of a space that you wouldn't have expected the work to be staged in, which is kind of allowing us all, I mean, in the greater world, to think about what are spaces that have a currency, a kind of a hidden currency, that could also be used in the same way. I mean, I think the putting the radio station inside this glass casing was also super, super fantastic. I think the idea of making image out of audio you know, that you have to imagine it, makes it even more hurtful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, so because we are very used to images of violence.
That's a very beautiful quote. We opened the Dutch Theatre Festival last week, and I invited 7 speakers to speak, and there was one speaker, perhaps you know her, Edith Kaldor. She's a maker from Holland, and she said the beautiful sentence in her opening speech, what you have seen, you can't unsee it, but you can re-see it. And I thought, wow, that's all about what I am, for example, doing, what we are doing when we are working about history, about trauma, about the genocide, for example, that we create a space where you can't forget what happened, but you can like try to get in this traumatic room in another way, to create new images, to kind of perhaps rationalize it. I don't know, but it's and then I said, yeah, this is very true.
That's
you can't unsee it, you can only
beautiful.
re-see it. Yeah, it's a beautiful sentence.
That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful, and kind of ties in some ways with what a whole bunch of thinkers are saying around Afro-pessimism. I don't know if you follow all this kind of theory around Afro-pessimism. You know, kind of the resistance to keep reusing these images of violence, like especially on Black bodies, you know, the re-traumatization, because you can re-see it, right? Like I think that's kind of what you can always re-see it, and then you return to the site of the trauma. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I feel somewhat. I think I understand. You can always re-see it. Yeah.
And you can also, I mean, in re-seeing it, perhaps it's even the same image, but it's connected to other things. For example, what we did in the Hate Radio show, we connect the beautiful music that was so important in '94 for my generation of Nirvana to the genocide in Rwanda, and that you immediately see this is not a crazy thing that happened in a world we have no access and we will never understand. It's just one globalized world, and everybody is using all this kind of little elements in a different way. Or the main figure, the most racistic person in our play has a Nelson Mandela shirt, you know? So that we try to mix, again, I don't know, cliches from the left mixed from cliches from right wing. For me, it was very interesting to see these tropical fascists like connecting themselves to the resistance in France, and then saying that the Tutsis are like Adolf Hitler and are all Nazis, and they think that they are the better race and they are the true Africans, you know, like this whole post-colonial rhetorics they used. So I was quite of, wow, these guys are really interesting. They are really clever, you know, and then you start to understand how it functions.
It's really amazing. Maybe we should send that man Zizek over there to give him a brief and truncated history of ideology. Or maybe just send everybody to the Gualag Peninsula for re-education. It's very troublesome, the soundbite ideologies. The soundbite ideologies. I mean, it's part of the problem with the social media and the internet highway, the super access to image, to audio, without kind of the depth of understanding. I mean, I feel like, okay, I want to kind of maybe tie it to the work that I'm trying to make right now, Nehanda. I'm working on the legend of Nehanda. It's an opera. I feel like the form of the opera kind of supports kind of the ambition that I have. But the lack of understanding of the history of Zimbabwe, like just how did it become to be what it is? There is so much that's missing in the story. You just go from the British to the evil Robert Gabriel Mugabe, and that's it. It's like, you know, there's no nuance. And so I feel like
was Robert Mugabe,
yeah.
No, just a little question from an outsider. Was Robert Mugabe not at a certain point a kind of a bright figure? In Europe, Robert Mugabe was very well seen for, let's say, 15 years, perhaps.
Absolutely. For me too. I mean, he remains. I think in 50 years, history will redeem him.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, he had certainly, but by bright figure, we mean that he was able to walk parallel with the European agendas without disturbing them so much. His fall from that brightness had to do with rejecting kind of the European platform. You know, so it's why I say I think in some ways history will redeem him when we talk about, you know, if we are about to remake the world and not only do reforms, you know, I mean, the whole colonial project needs to be revisited, and people need to be braver, more Che Guevara about exactly what we're trying to do. So it's a complicated history. For me, Robert Mugabe is a complicated character who really embodies the complexity of African history.
I interrupted your monologue about the opera you were preparing, because you were saying.
So basically, yes, it's the lack of information, the lack of knowledge, both on the Western side and on the African side, that I'm having to really explain everything as if you were talking to a 7-year-old or even less, you know, because there is a complete amnesia on the European side about what the colony was and what it did and how it got to be the way. For instance, we had keeps during the Chimurenga, the second Chimurenga in Zimbabwe. Keeps are concentration camps. You know, a keep is similar to like where you keep your chickens and stuff fenced off. So the rhodesians thought the best way to kind of cut the armed resistance by the natives was to take the rural population, which was the support system, away and put them in concentrated areas surrounded by a fence that you couldn't leave, you know.
It was exactly a concentration camp.
It's a concentration camp. So, you know, and to revisit this moment, it's like people are like, whoa, you know, there about Southern Africa, there's only interest around apartheid.
Yeah.
Only South Africa is interesting. The rest is not so. It's not so interesting, you know. So there is very little information available. So to make also the performative space a classroom, you know, which is why I was interested in these concepts of the schools of resistance. You know, I think, don't you agree that every performance has to be a school?
I agree, and I would even develop it because the School of Resistance. I think the meeting in between you and Chantal was a bit strange for your side, because she's really on her theory. But what I try to do is, because what we miss in Europe, we don't connect to knowledge of India, to knowledge of Zimbabwe, to knowledge of Latin America. We just don't know it. We say every little movement in Europe, when they are occupying land, for example, occupying land close to Paris. We did a big occupation project. Then we think, oh wow, we are the first ones. We did it, never did it before. And when you go to the third world or the global south, then I mean, there is such a big experience of occupying land, and not, of course, not only by the colonizers, but as an act of resistance. For example, the landless movement in Brazil, they just developed a way, and very detailed, how to occupy land without being criminalized, without being killed. and to become kind of landowner, really.
Yes.
So, and you can learn so much when you interconnect this knowledge.
This is true. For instance, the whole the townships, how the townships expand. It's occupation of land without any kind of permit. You know, you see all the shanties, the shanty towns, the so-called shanty towns. Whether it's Kenya or it's South Africa or Zimbabwe, they just explosions of people just occupying land and building a very, very primary structures with whatever they have. I mean, this is occupation of land. This is taking back land, you know. And then the cities or the government, the infrastructures are then forced to come in and create proper structures.
Yeah, the Jesus film. I wanted to show you Ivan, but it ended in catastrophe. But it's there is one quote in the Bible which is very beautiful and was occupying land, etc., in south of Italy to produce in another way, for example, tomatoes. And there we were quoting the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus says, "I'm not breaking the law, I'm fulfilling the law. I don't break the law, I fulfill the law." And this is exactly what we try to do, because in the European Constitution and the Italian Constitution, you have the right to occupy land if this land is not productive, if this land is owned by criminals, and so on and so on. So you even have the right, and I think that this land was not owned by nobody.
So what are you rehearsing now? What are you rehearsing now?
I just came back from Venice. We made the premiere of the Jesus film finally 2 days ago at the festival, and now I came back and we were rehearsing yesterday and today. I do a new version of The Repetition, which is a play I made 2 years ago, and we adapt and we rework it. I do often that with old plays. After like 1-2 years, it becomes a bit boring, and then we do a new version. And what are you in, Nora, at this very moment?
I am in the opera that I am working on, but mostly writing the libretto. Still writing the libretto and trying, you know, it's my first official libretto for, you know, an opera. So wrestling with the fact that opera is, for me, perhaps the last bastion of bourgeoisness.
Yeah.
And what is a poor working class African woman trying to do? I mean, opera is not only bourgeois; it's also very much anti-female in some ways, and very much anti-black. So trying to enter this space like a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
Right. So I'm writing a libretto. It's very, very challenging because I have very non-traditional ways of writing. Because I don't come from any sort of academia. I am not a product of an art school. I write from the heart. I write from research. I write from, you know, a desire for political change. You know, so trying to make this libretto for the people that I hope will be able to understand it, which is, you know, all the entire global South, but also for people who have the funding to support it so that it can be made. Massive challenge. So I would, that's what I'm working on.
And who's doing the music for it? Who's doing the composition for your libretto?
Well, that's something I also wanted to destroy on the way to the opera house, was to work with my primary team, which we all contribute and create together. So we were trying to make music in our way together, compose together. I kind of, like this idea of composing ourselves, but it wasn't getting any love from the powers that be, the support systems that are currently in place. So I'm waiting for that workers' revolution to succeed so that we can shift everything. So Omar Sosa, who is a fantastic musician, Cuban, is joined the team to work with us and to support the team. And we will still keep this effort of composing internally, but with a master, so-called, somebody who is professionally is read as a musician.
Stuff together. Yeah.
We're putting. Yeah. So these have been issues that have been very, very interesting. So how do we create new language, new ways of working? Do we need a librettist who's so-called a librettist but has never been to Zimbabwe?
Yeah. Makes no sense. Yeah.
It makes no sense. Do we need a composer who cannot understand what the mbira is and that whole sacred knowledge that is embodied in African instruments? So, how do we work with these tensions, really, that the form may look like a European form, but really all the material and the content comes from another way of working. So this is still the process I am in, and trying to encourage the entire team to be brave enough, courageous enough.
you know the European strategy. It will become European, but just by appropriating it and bringing it to a European opera house, it will be enough.
Or at least this is what capital does. Capitalism doesn't care. It's like,
just
if
finish
it's good,
it, then we buy it.
Exactly. So that's what I'm working on. It's super exciting. I mean, it means to have to understand the mechanics, the logistics of how colonialism actually happened, not just the rhetoric of, we were overtaken, we were subjugated, day one we lost, but how does it happen? All the companies, for instance, most of India, most of Africa was overtaken by companies. This is about capital. This is about business. What were these companies actually after? They were after minerals, and these are the laws that are. And then they made the laws to support the extraction of capital.
Minerals, Eastern Congo is the best example for this. I mean, or the example I know, because there's really, it's a free trade, a big free trade zone called a country. It's really crazy.
Yes, it's So that's So there, we need to fulfill the law in some ways. So so the work is also about how do you remake the law? How do you fulfill the law? And assuming that there is no law, because the law that is not just is not law.
Because the law is not adapted. The real law.
Yes, exactly. Oh, this has been so exciting. I am so happy to have touched base with you.
It was great. I know that there were some difficulties in between us, but
technical difficulties, just technical issues, Milo, nothing else. It was wonderful, really, to enjoy you too.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much to invite me to this talk.
It was amazing. I just wanted to tell you something, just as a comment because the people after this encounter of you two, the people from the festival that is watching, looking being in the festival, they are gonna be able to watch your documentary, Hate Radio, the documentary that you did of Hate Radio, with the International Institute of Political Murder. And one thing, because I saw Hate Radio when it came here to the festival in 2015 to La Casa Encendida, And I remember one moment that it was, to me, it was like my favorite moment because it really show what you were talking before with Nora about the images that you wanted to create of violence in the people of that this one, the main character, Catano, Hamibana, no? That it was Diogene Natirandawa. He was the actor, the name of the actor, that he stand-ups and he started dancing. And he started dancing. And at this moment is like one of the most violent moments that I ever felt in a theater. And it was just a guy dancing. And all these images of the genocide came into my mind and was really very amazing. So yes,
and he dances together with I Like to Move It, which is a song from the 90s. You know, we connect again with everything at this very moment. And Diogene, he was invading and liberating Rwanda. He was a child soldier at that time, coming in with the nowadays president. So it's like everything mixes. True.
He was so strong. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Nora, and thank you, the festival.
Yes, have a great day and have a great rehearsal. And in solidarity, we are always together. We'll see each other somewhere.
Muchas gracias a todos y a todas por asistir a los encuentros que hemos celebrado este año. Todavía podéis ver sobre la belleza de Societat Dr. Alonso en el patio de la Casa Encendida, mañana viernes 25 y el sábado 26. Todos los contenidos del festival se podrán ver hasta el día 30 de septiembre en el canal de YouTube de la Casa ON y los encuentros de modo indefinido.